Hello YouTube, welcome to the EWR Motorsports Podcast. I'm Emerson Arn and I'm here with Larry Arsenault, Kyle Petrie, Craig Patterson, Luis Torres, and more, here to bring you some of the best analysis and opinions of the news and action from this past weekend in the amazing world of racing. Here we go!
Rip, sorry guys, we got technical difficulties. It loaded up for me.
Oh, there we go. I see something. I see something now.
Yeah, we're running off an ARCA budget, sadly. We're too broke for this
Let's
fucking
see, the
game.
Haley Deegan and Queen Decker 350.
Yeah.
This is going to be a party for the winner tonight.
Oh, yeah.
I would not partake in that, especially one of them is 17.
Alrighty, so
I didn't mean that way.
I had my mic muted, but so yeah, we're gonna go ahead and start here. Speaking about being on a budget, Furniture Racing announced earlier today that they will be ceasing operation at the end of the 2018 NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series season. What are our thoughts on a defending series championship winning race team calling it quits because money issues and losing sponsorship, etc.? Before we get into what's rumored and where Truex and Cole Pern will go, let's talk about Furniture itself first.
Devastating, considering the fact that this team used to be associated with Kenny Wallace and Jerry Robertson, only known to be a one-pole wonder at Talladega, and then it became... Regan Smith had some success in qualifying to finally winning at Darlington, where technically it's the second win, which will not go into any further as to why it's the second win, to just become winning contenders, the champions. They're the first team since Raymond Beadle's Blue Max Racing in 1990 where the defending championship winning team ceased operations at the end of the following season, and that was Rusty Wallace, who was in that team that went to Penske in 1991. And the reason why I'm talking this loud because of to get rid of background noises.
All right, but so you're
My
saying
ears are
that
bleeding.
you're saying that this is not the first time a team has done this?
No, this goes back 28 years ago when Raymond Beadle's team shut down. So Rusty and took his Miller Genuine draft money to Roger Penske in 1991, where he stayed for the rest of his career.
I just want to say, this is going to really dictate how much trouble this sport is in. You're a defending series champion who had 8 wins last season. 8 wins. Has 4 wins this season and can't find a sponsorship. The team is shutting down. He's third in points. He's competing for a championship, considered to be one of the big 3, and he can't find a sponsorship. The team just shut down. What? What is happening? I mean,
A world crisis.
why is NASCAR?
This should be a wake-up call to NASCAR.
Why are one of the most successful teams in the most recent year and 2 years struggling, and now finally calling it quits at the end of the season? What is this? I was at a loss. I expected it. because it sounded like they weren't going to get sponsorship. But even when I was expecting it, I was still thinking, why? A team is doing so good, 12 wins since the beginning, since February 2017. This team has won 12 times.
That's just the nature of this sport these days. If you don't have the money, or if you don't have, it doesn't matter who you are, how big you are. I think when you look back, they're from Denver, Colorado, and they've done this all from an outsider standpoint, which I don't understand why they don't get nobody's interested in buying. Is it probably because of the whole Brian France arrest that sponsors are shying away or not interested, or they just want somebody that has the charming look, which is just like any business model this day, even in the professional world of anything.
But
it's got to be about looks.
okay, but what kind of story it would be for you to say you're the sponsor of a race car driver whose wife is fighting ovarian cancer, you were the small team, the little engine that could, and now you're dominating races and winning championships? What kind of a story that would be for you to be a part of, and you're not out here doing your job? What?
And that's the frustrating thing is, I still remember a few years ago, people were saying when Truex and Berger were going to go to Toyota, everybody resented it. It was like, oh, he's not going to do well. I was one of the few people, not one of the only ones, that said, if as long as they go align with Gibbs, they're going to be great. And look where they are. And now it looks like Truex and Joe Gibbs might be an actual thing.
Yes, but Furniture Row is huge backfire since they switched to Toyota. They became aligned with Gibbs. They went to a two-kart team, lost lots of money, and now they're barely hanging on. So them ultimately switching to Toyota could have possibly led to this, where if they stayed with Chevy, they're probably not going to become a two-kart team, or at least not a second full-time team, and they wouldn't have had to buy an entire new chassis, new body, get new equipment and everything. If they would just stay in with what they had before, all they would have to do was adapt to aero packages, because the car is the same, just splitters and aero spoilers.
They probably would have struggled. Look how awful they were in 2014 as a Chevy. I don't know if they would have had the same parallel success if they haven't.
I don't think they...
Back to look at future risk.
I mean, I don't think they would have won their championship, but I think they would still be a team, and they would still win some races.
Yeah, and the whole landscape would have probably be so much different. Instead of talking about Truex as being a heavy contender, it was just going to be just Harvick. And maybe Kyle Busch, but mostly Harvick would have been the focal point of this time period, instead of just being him, Truex, and Kyle.
So let's go ahead and let's get more people involved. Larry, Kyle, Craig, what are your thoughts? Raptor, what are your thoughts on Truex? Not Truex, the team.
It shows you how much a cup car is also to run. The cup cars are not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from a driver's perspective and knowing what to run a race car is, race cars are not cheap. It's probably one of the most expensive sports out there outside of the other major leagues. Talking about baseball, football, and other racing series. NASCAR is not cheap to run. Tires are not well enough to run. That's why Goodyear's been bringing harder compounds. But the drivers want these cars to lose their grip, and it shows you how it's just not a cheap sport. That's why we need sponsorships, and that's why you see that 78 team shutting down at the end of this year.
It comes to the point where, wasn't it just a couple years ago, you used to be able to have 12 sets of Goodyear tires per race, and now you only get like 3 or 4, 5?
Well, the
Yeah,
R2
something like
series, Xfinity, and look at what trucks and Xfinity did. They have a tire limit on both series, and trucks have NASCAR's providing engines for underfunded teams, and look where that actually is going for the truck series, and that's actually been good racing for this series. The R2 series, since that rule's been in place.
I like to say that, but if they're helping the underfunded teams, we still have teams like Travis Quapple, where a GMS pit crew member had to come over and fuel his truck. We still have Norm Benning out here with one pit crew member. Like, these underfunded teams need some help, because...
Oh yeah, they need more help, but at least it's a start where they don't have to spend a shit ton of money on a race engine for week in and week out operations. That's why you start seeing rules in our racing series
I do
Start
like that.
coming.
Yeah. That's something to note. But yeah, one of the most dominating racing teams in the past 2 or 3 seasons. Now with very little sponsorship besides Bass Pro, who now have left Furniture Row because Furniture Row is no longer a thing at the end of the season. Barney Visser, he used to sponsor the car himself, but I mean, like you said, it's just not worth it at this point if you're just gonna lose money by self-sponsoring it.
Yeah, it's one of these. Back to the sport thing. Me, Kyle, and Larry should know it the best because all of us race. Definitely Larry. Larry, how much is it to run your race car on a given weekend? On a normal
On
race
a
weekend?
given weekend?
Yeah.
Let's see. You're looking at maybe almost $500 in tires. Close to $150 in gas. Spare parts, maybe somewhere in the $500 to $1,000 range, depending on how much we break.
That's already $1,650.
And if we happen to blow a motor, that's about $15,000 to replace. So even at the local level, racing is not the
Yeah.
cheapest thing in the world.
And now you times that by 4 or 5, and that's where the Cup Series is, or the Truck Series is at. It's just not a cheap sport.
I
It
can't
shows
remember
you-
where I heard it, but to field a full-time NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series car is somewhere close to the $1.5 million range.
I thought that's for one race.
That is. That's on
That
a
is for-
week. That's a full-time one race.
I'm like you said,
Now
full
multiply
time.
that by about 36.
Yeah, it's insane.
True. And
And
don't forget if you
tackling
have
dual
multiple
races.
cars.
And the restricted plate cars are
Yeah.
and restricted plate cars are not cheap to make either. Think
No.
of how long these guys have been working on these Daytona cars and Talladega cars. They start this right at the end of the season, probably a month after the season, or they're starting it sooner.
Yeah,
Put
just to
5
go
on.
get torn up on lap 2.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's NASCAR's just not in a good spot right now, and also with what you said with the president of NASCAR getting in trouble with the law, sponsorships don't want to see that at all.
But
It could be.
I could see it being that.
Yeah.
all right, so that's as far as Furniture Row is concerned. But we have just confirmed about a couple hours ago, Cole Pern, Martin Truex Jr., and crew members will be going over to the 19 car next season.
As well as Bass Pro Shops.
And Bass Pro Shops, that's right. So yeah, Suarez just got the boot. Well,
Back to Mexico he goes.
Before we get to
No, I actually have a theory about what could
so
happen
before we
there.
get to what happens to Suarez, what is this move for Truex? Does it end up being a good thing or a bad thing? We saw Suarez is not the greatest at 19, but he did towards right before he got the boot. Suarez was getting better and better each week in the 19 car, and now it's just gonna be all for naught. He won't have the right next season, but
I don't know. Suarez, I think he needed a little bit more time next year to get used to these tracks.
definitely, I think he needed more time
I'm
in
behind the
Xfinity.
wheel.
But also, it's not his fault necessarily. Carl Edwards
No, it's
retired
not.
at a weird time, and Suarez was just the next one in line. He's like, get in the cup car, man. Like,
Yeah,
oh.
it was
Well,
just it was a very bad set of circumstances when it comes to how Suarez got the ride, because it wasn't like a typical call-up from Xfinity. This was a last-second decision that had to be made.
He wanted to do at
because-
least another year in Xfinity. I think he was signed for another year in Xfinity.
He was, but with George getting the boot and with Eric Jones not ready yet, he's starting his rookie season in Xfinity.
I mean, Christopher Bell.
Yeah,
Eric Jones.
was at the-
Eric Jones
Yeah,
is in the
number-
20.
Joe, yeah, I was gonna say, wait, after Edwards retired, Jones was already announced as the 77, so I don't think he could have got out of it regardless.
No, he couldn't. I forgot.
It's
about
just, I feel like Suarez's career kind of got ruined by him getting thrown into the 19 car at a time where he even himself wasn't ready. But like, what are you gonna do? Say no and then not have an opportunity to move up at all? I mean,
Exactly.
I
mean,
feel like he was just in a bad spot. And it's ultimately up to him because he said his dream is just to drive race. It wasn't necessarily to get the cup. He's already fulfilling his dream. I mean, I'm sure he'd love to win a cup race, but I don't know. Let's say, hey, before we, well, I guess we'll just finish up with Suarez and we'll get back to Truex. Or, well, how about, so, Truex being in a 19 car, does he do better? Does he do worse? What do we think?
I think he does better because we saw with Carl Edwards, that car can win races and it can perform. I think it was just the driver that was underperforming the car.
And be honest, and also crew chief and relationship, you had probably the best two relationships in the garage. With those two in the 19, I think the 19's going to win some races next year, but
I think it's gonna win some. I just don't think it's going to be as
dominant.
Not to disrespect Truex in any way, but he has not been consistent this season. He's won a race and then DNF, won a race and DNF. Like, okay, so I think it's even gonna be less consistent now, especially because he's gonna have to kind of adapt to a new facility. He's not gonna be in Denver anymore, so he'll get up to speed quickly, but yeah.
I will say this though, but go ahead first.
I was done.
No, somebody
Oh,
else was
Craig.
trying to say something. Go ahead.
I just don't really think there's going to be much of a change as far as the performance of Truex. I mean, granted, yes, there is the transition to video games and everything, but for Nitro Racing, that'll be a big learning curve. But I think once they get past that, it'll be about the same old, same old. Because, I mean, basically, Nitro Racing is a satellite team of Joe Gibbs, so the performance is still going to be there, the equipment is going to still be the same.
I was about to say the equipment's almost miracle. Same.
We saw at some points the 78 team clearly even better than most of the Joe Gibbs cars, maybe with the exception of Kyle Busch. So that's where I think maybe it's actually gonna hurt him in the long run, because he definitely, out of the Toyota racing team cars, he was definitely the best or second best driver in the 78 car. He's outbeating the 11, the 20, and the 19 on any given weekend. And the 18 sometimes.
Here's the thing though. Before going to Denver, Colorado was the thing is they were in a different environment. They don't have to face the pressure, the agonizing frustration of being in Concord, Mooresville, and Charlotte. I think for most of them, going to Carolina will be an odd transition, and that's the big question: can they transition well from being secluded and calm to a upbeat, cut the road environment like it is down there?
That is true.
When Cole used to work for RCR, one of the main reasons why he enjoyed going to Furniture Road so much was because he doesn't have to put up with it. I'm not sure how you feel now, but that's my big concern for him is would he handle the pressure going back to that environment in the Carolinas. I think he could now that he's established himself as one of the top crews, he's probably one of the future all-time greats. But it's just a matter of the transition.
I didn't even think about, home life being an influence on performance. That's very true. It could get to.
Not just in racing, but in
Yeah. But I didn't even think about the move from Denver to Charlotte for Cole Pern would be that. I didn't even think it didn't even occur to my mind that that very well could influence some results. So we'll see. I guess we have no other choice. Do we think Truex goes even harder to finish out the season on top, or do you think Truex kind of falls under and just kind of midfields it through the playoffs?
Probably
I
goes
think
harder.
he pushes, but he doesn't push as hard as he did last year.
All right, so we're pretty much saying he's gonna try to get to the Final Four, but he's probably not winning the championship.
Yeah.
All right,
I think it'll be a great story if he actually pushes it, though.
it'd be
Oh
something.
yeah, if he can somehow push it and win the championship and put Furniture Row out on top like Brad did with Dodge, it would be a great story.
Yeah. So that's what we have. Furniture Row shutting down. Carl Edwards. What the fuck? Truex is going to the 19th. Suarez is out of a ride. Larry, I heard you had a theory. What happens to Suarez, possibly Bell, upcoming? So why don't you go ahead and share that with us?
Okay, so it's kind of far-fetched, but Levine has already announced that they are switching to Toyota next year, which sparked me to believe that Christopher Bell is going into one of those rides. However, with Furniture Row shutting down, I think it's possible that Levine buys that charter, gets a second full-time car, and puts Suarez in the second car.
That's possible.
Oh.
Can be done. Look what the 50. The funny thing, I think it's more likely going to be the 59. But even when the 59 when it drove that few races back in like 15 or 16-ish.
McDowell finished 10th. Yeah, I'm like, McDowell finished 10th in the 59 at Homestead, so 59 is not a bad car.
No, it wouldn't be if they bring it back, especially with Toyota Power. If it's the same buying, I think they're going to be up there. And Levine has only been in the sport for not that, it's just this decade alone, and if they're able to climb up, the future looks bright if they play it smart, and health problems doesn't get in the way as well.
Alright, so we spent a while already on Truex. It's very sad to hear. But yeah, Truex going to the 19 with Cole Pern. Bass Pro Shops is going to the 19. I don't know if Eris is going to stay with Joe Gibbs, since they are pretty much a Joe Gibbs sponsor since they went from Edwards to Suarez. I don't know. Maybe Eris goes to Eric Jones. That's my theory. I don't know.
I think what you'll see with Eris
or maybe
is
Eris
they may
is
fill in the sponsorship races that
forgot about-
5-hour
Yeah, I forgot that.
would have signed next year should they have actually stayed in the sport, and should Furniture Row have stayed. But the other thing is they could actually go with Suarez wherever he does wind up, whether it is a second car at Levine or maybe some other shock ride that opens up at the end of the season.
Alright, so we're going to go ahead. We're going to start off with the Cup Series review, the 69th annual Bojangles Southern 500. Clearly a domination fest by yours truly, Kyle Larson. What do you have to say about just the way he drove his race yesterday before we even got to the final restarts? Just Kyle Larson driving the race in general. Well, what do we say about that?
It was good to say the least. I mean, Larson, not one of the big three, but definitely one that I wouldn't say necessarily is a long shot, but he could beat them if they beat it. If a strategy call or something happens, Larson is one of the favorites to actually upset the big three this season.
Here's the thing. Get him into the Final Four at Homestead. He's amazing at Homestead.
He would be a right-up favorite at Homestead. Like we saw it last year. He clearly was faster than the 18 and the 78 there, but out of respect and sportsmanship, he decided not to go for the win and screw up their race while they were racing for a championship.
I still feel the same way with Jeff Gordon in 2014.
So we say Kyle Larson led 284 of 367 laps. He earned 54 points and 2 playoff points. Pretty good race for Kyle Larson. We did see throughout the race he had some trouble with lap cars, most notably Austin Dillon. What do we think about the lap cars at Darlington? I know it's more of it's going to happen every year no matter what, but lap cars at Darlington this year seem to be really impeding some of the racers. I mean, Derek Cope was out here 25 laps down and blocking the leaders. So.
If you're already like
Blake Jones was not in that race.
Goddamn shit boxes.
Wait, Derek Cope was running at the end, and he was 23 laps down.
You made Jeff Berger look like Mark Truex Jr., Derek. Congratulations. All we need is just Blake Jones to beat lap 30 more times, and he'll make Derek Cook look like Casey Michael McDowell.
But yeah, so what about Kyle Larson and Austin Dillon? Do you think what Austin Dillon did was right, or I don't know? What do we think about?
I mean, I understand the fact that Larson is the leader. He's trying to keep the lead in the stage for the better himself in the playoffs. But at the same time, Austin Dillon's on the outside. I've got to stand by. This could very well be by the ratings where I can performance. Granted, which I just did not seem to have that much.
Not that I don't disagree with that, but Larson was not pushing at the end of the stages. Well, at the end of stage 2 was there, but at the end of stage 1, he wasn't pushing. He was letting I mean, literally, you saw him pull off to the left side and let some people get laps back. He wasn't pushing to pass the 3 car. He just got close to the 3, and then the 3 almost put him in the wall, or did put him in the wall. So, I don't know. And then, I don't know. What do you have to say about lap cars in general? It was a pretty tough race, lap cars.
I feel. Oh, go ahead, Jimmy.
The tough track, no matter whether you're on the lead lap or not. It's such tight turns, just little.
Suarez was 9 laps down.
You're gonna run into somebody every lap. It's just part of the racetrack, part of what makes it such an intense race.
Landon Castle was 10 down.
And I believe he put the 00 in P30 at the end of the day.
Yep. JJ Yaley was 17 down. BJ McLeod was 20 down. Derek Cope was 21 down. Jeffrey Earnhardt was 23 down.
Oh, when we get to the Xfinity Series, I have a little bit on Landon Castle I'd like to bring up.
So that lap cars impeding most of the race. That's kind of Darlington. What do you think about? I'll let y'all decide what to call it. But the incident with Kyle Busch and Joey Gase, was it a misjudgment? Was it a misjudgment? A flat-out dumping? What do we say about Kyle Busch taking out the 23 car?
I actually did not see that, so I
I'd say
can't
don't even know what you're
comment.
talking about. But okay.
I don't know what to make of it because I mean we saw this issue with Kyle Busch.
At Bristol, it's the same thing. And does he hate with fellow Toyotas? He took out Truex at Bristol, and Joey Gase, who was driving the number 23 Toyota, he's taking out 2 Toyotas in 2 straight races.
I just don't think it's more so an issue with other fellow Toyota drivers. I think it's just the mindset of Kyle Busch. You either get out of my way or I'm gonna move you. We've seen that attitude throughout the years, and I think it's just beginning to surface in peculiar instances lately.
Yeah.
I think that could be the case because some drivers, like, they have the 3-tap rule, like, I'll tap you once, move, I'll tap you twice, okay, you better move. The 3rd time, I'm moving you.
Alright, I don't know if you saw the 23 car crash, Luis, but what about you?
I feel like it's just typical racing. I didn't really see anything being concerning. Just Joey Gaines might have gotten caught just right, or he just didn't have a good exit in the corner and he just right. As far as the Darlington race is concerned, it's just in general, I thought it was pretty decent. I couldn't necessarily pay attention to the Cup race all that much, especially the first stage because of a certain event that I'll discuss later on in the program.
Alright.
But lap cars it seems like there was an issue, and then also ultimately played some performances all around, but it's just Darlington, and people are complaining about lap traffic more so than ever.
Alright, so lap traffic's one thing. Another very tough issue at Bristol was pitting. We saw Matt Kenseth, Jimmy Johnson, two of the sport's veterans, miss pit road at Darlington, get commitment cone violations. And then another couple veterans, Ryan Newman and Clint Boyer, while Ryan Newman was trying to pit from the middle of the racetrack. I still don't know to this day why he was trying to pit from the middle of the racetrack. But he was, and there was a crash afterwards. So what about just getting on the pit road here, and then what about the actual Ryan Newman-Clint Boyer crash?
Darlington's one of these tracks where it is a hard pit lane to get in. You can misjudge it just a little bit by just speed. You can go too fast and you can miss it. I mean, these drivers are some of the best, but also they can make mistakes. I mean, you see them last night. Well, not last night.
We have the 48, the 1, and the 6 all had commitment cone violations. Jeffrey Earnhardt had 2 penalties on the same pit stop, too many men over the wall, and tossing a fuel can.
I think a lot of it just has to do with, like what Lance Gibbs has said, yeah, sure you can paint a box on the racetrack, but maybe it needs to be something more visual, like a pylon or maybe a cone.
I mean, I understand why they shied away from the cone, but the cone is very pivotal because you really can't see it. I mean, you're in a car. I'm sure the windshield isn't as clean as you'd like it to be. So.
Not with rubber debris on it and shit like that. Only time that rubber debris is coming off. When
And then it's Darlington. It's tough to get on the pit road.
I mean, they say it is the hardest pit road in NASCAR to get on.
Other than Dover, I believe it.
Well, I mean, we saw Denny Hamlin, what was it, last year, completely miss it and have to take another lap around?
Still,
Or was
won.
it the year before that Hamlin did that?
It was last year. I don't know. What about Ryan Newman pitting, and he's still in the middle lane of the racetrack, right, like at pit entry?
Bad judgment.
Really, really bad judgment. He was sitting on the racing line at like 60 miles per hour. I was confused. And Clint Boyer had nowhere to go.
I mean, if he was, clearly he was going to attempt to pit, but what he should have done is he should have been way lower and his hand should have been out the window signaling that he's going to pit.
I don't think there was any saving him at that point to put a hand out the window. He might have hurt himself more. I mean, he was really off from pit lane. I had no words
I'm not
for
saying
him.
he should have put the hand out like where he was because he wasn't going to get saved with a hand out the window, but I'm saying in a perfect instance he should have been lower with his hand out the window so that people could avoid him and where he's not sitting in the middle of the racing line because clearly that's just waiting for something to happen.
I'm like, this is a one-time thing, but let's say this happens again. There's more wrecks getting on the pit road at Darlington. Yeah, it's fun, but I mean, running into a basically parked car on the middle of a racetrack probably isn't the safest thing. So, and Ryan Newman, he got hit in the ass. I mean, so I feel like NASCAR needs to make a little bit more of a rule. Maybe have like you know how you have the pit access lane on the exit at Homestead in Indianapolis. Maybe you need to have them go under the white line or something to pit for turn 3. Like as soon as the white line starts, you should be under that white line for a pit. Yeah, have a pit entry. Because man, that looked heavy.
It's getting to
Things like AJ Allmendinger in 2010, I still to this day I don't remember.
I don't he cut half the track and took out the 48. I don't know. That was scary. I didn't know if they were alive after that one. My goodness.
Darlington's one of these racetracks where stuff can break pretty easily. How rough the track is and how track's 10 years old, but the track is in
What
one
we
of these
didn't
areas
hear
where
a lot about, and it probably happened more than what we saw in the television broadcast, but we didn't really hear a lot about the Darlington stripe. So not this caution, but the next caution, Jeffrey Earnhardt spun out in turn 1 and 2. Caution came out, and then it came down to pit stops. Kyle Larson dominated all day, and it was by literally the front fender, the left front fender. That was the entire width between himself and leading on the restart. Brad Keselowski beat Kyle Larson by inches. I mean, I don't know. Kyle Larson's pit crew basically costed him a win by 1/10 of a second, or 1/100th of a second on pit road. I mean, that's literally how much things can be changed on pit road. I mean, it was that little, but it changed the entire outcome of a race, because you could tell Kyle Larson really couldn't handle his car in traffic. So I don't know. What do we say about that final round of pit stops after the Jeffrey Earnhardt spin and the ensuing restart?
I think it really just came down to a money stop type situation where the two teams had to just execute a little bit better. Maybe the 42 had a little mistake on God, whatever it was, it set them up for a restart, and the two teams just executed perfectly. They had to.
Yeah, after the green flag, Brad led 24 laps. I don't know how long the restart was, but he led 24 laps in the race, and he ended up taking the victory here at Darlington. And yeah, a throwback car won. Pretty happy with that. What are our thoughts just overall on the Darlington race? It was a little boring. Honestly, I didn't watch it all, but thoughts overall on the race.
It wasn't the most entertaining race this year, but it also wasn't the least either. Like, there was still an entertainment value to it that outshined some of the other races that we've had this year.
Sure. And then I think just having those throwbacks to always hypes up that race.
Right.
I don't know if y'all heard. Go ahead.
And the 11, which was just a throwback to himself.
The 48, I understand their throwback, but I feel like they could have thrown back to his first Darlington win, not his most recent.
I felt like that would have been a better fitting throwback, would have been the first, or even like maybe the 2007 Cobalt car.
Yeah. But was it the next year's Southern 500 theme is the 1990 to 1994.
I already have a prediction for a couple throwbacks.
Shoot.
The real question is, are we going to see a black...
That I'm actually gonna go ahead and comment. We will see the black number 3 return, despite what Martha Earnhardt said about 4 years ago, that she did not want to see another black number 3 in NASCAR.
I mean, that's the one to ask the family about. That's the one that they should ask the family about.
I don't know, man. I'm sure there's another 3-car scheme between 1990 and 1994 Austin Dillon will run.
Personally, I don't want to see the black number 3 come back, because that's just a dark scheme to remember and have to re-look at, because obviously, even if it's not based on the 2001, like, there was not a lot of changes on that black number 3
Okay,
throughout the
but
years.
we still have Fireball Roberts throwbacks. What makes that any different?
There's really no difference.
It's just a band-aid.
Yeah.
Makes it so difficult, I guess you could say.
I don't know. That's more of a topic we'll discuss at a later date, probably around a couple weeks before today next year. So after Darlington, 2 drivers have yet to lock themselves into the playoffs, but 14 drivers have. Let me go. I forget exactly who's locked in. I got this. Any moment now. Okay. So we have Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., Clint Boyer, Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Chase Elliott, Kurt Busch, Eric Jones, Austin Dillon on wins. Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, and Eric Almirola on points. Jimmy Johnson is 87 ahead in 15th. Alex Bowman is 68 ahead in 16th. Do they both make the playoffs? Or hold on. Do we see a first-time winner outside of the top 16 win Indianapolis?
I say no because Indy's.
It's going to have to be a race like last year where there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the front to manipulate a chance for somebody outside the top 16 to win.
Agree with that.
So right now, Alex Bowman, 68 points ahead of Ricky Stenhouse. He is like, if we can guarantee there would not be a new winner next week at Indianapolis, or a winner from outside top 16 at Indianapolis, Alex Bowman's already mathematically in. But because there is the chance of a new winner at Indianapolis, even in the slightest bit, he's not mathematically locked in. He's actually in by over, because for a full race, he gets 60 points. He has 68. Jimmy Johnson has 87. Provided there is a first-time winner outside the top 16, who makes it in, Johnson or Bowman?
I would say the 48.
Yeah, I want to give the edge to the 48 on this one.
I mean, if 48 doesn't have another big mistake like he did this week, but who knows?
Mm-hmm.
And he's one of these tracks where a simple car getting loose underneath you, like we seen last year, it can take your race out. Anything can happen deep in the field. So
Anything can happen anywhere in the field. We saw Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. 1-2 take each other out.
exactly, that's what I mean. Anything can happen in this field.
So yeah, anything can happen. So it's more likely that the current chase grid we have now is going to be the playoff grid, leaving Indianapolis. So who does win Indianapolis?
Shit.
I say to one of the big three. I have to say probably Harvick or Kyle Busch.
Damn, Kyle.
My bad, yo.
No, you're good. Oh my god, Tommy Joe Martin's got stage points. What the hell?
I feel like there might be a surprise winner. Not so much outside the chance grid, but I feel like we might see somebody
Someone might repeat. Could be. Very well.
If I had to go,
Kyle Larson or somebody. Maybe a Jimmy Johnson surprise.
I mean, it's not out of the question. Jimmy was battling for the lead with 2 laps to go. Last year.
And I really think the Chevys have come a long way as far as performance.
Oh, they have, but I don't.
Earlier as to now.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing is, where Chevy has got the Camaro pretty well figured out at this point, it's possible that a Chevy could pull off the upset and win. Whether it be
We
the
won't know until-
48 or the 42.
I mean, you never want to count Jimmy Johnson out of anything, because he's not had the best season, but Chad Knaus will always find a way,
Oh,
and you can
God.
almost
Chad Knaus
guarantee
is
it.
one of the smartest and best in the business. If there's a crew chief that can figure out how to turn around a season as rough as Jimmy's had, he's the guy.
And let's go back to 2011, and no, he did not win the championship in 2011, but he wasn't having the greatest season as well. He turned it up. If it wasn't for his crash at Charlotte, he probably had a better chance to win the title. But Jimmy Johnson hadn't won all season, save for Talladega. He won the Talladega Spring Race, but for the entire regular season, he had not won. As soon as he got to the chase, everything started to turn up. Chad Knaus brought the heat. They won Kansas. They crashed at Charlotte, which pretty much ended their chance to win the title. But so anything can happen with the 48 team, honestly.
It really can. I mean, the 48 team's been one of the best Hendrick cars last handful of years. But
It's gonna be
question
interesting.
is, can they
Can't-
find that heat again?
Can Chad Knaus do it? We know he can, but okay, will he do it?
The equipment is starting to get there for Chevy. I think they need a little bit more help with those cars. But they've been fast at restrict plates.
So they start off the playoffs with Las Vegas, a mile and a half. Not going to expect a lot out of Hendrick out of the mile and a half, but we have Richmond. It could turn out to be a wreck fest. Something could happen. And then we have the big variable. The Roval is the cutoff race.
and it's probably one of the best. And we have yet to see anything. from
We
that.
have no idea who will win the Roval. Will it be AJ Allmendinger? Will it be Truex? Will it be Kyle Busch? Who's gonna win the Roval? We don't know.
I feel like Allmendinger's got to be a right-in favorite, just because he's always won when you go to the road course. But where this is a different style and a new road course,
Exactly.
could that actually play a factor?
I feel like actually,
someone outside the top 16 win that race.
I feel like
That's what I
considering
think.
he is, so here's the thing, I would say Allmendinger is the favorite for that race too. Considering when he goes into Sonoma and Watkins Glen, he always has the pressure on him. I have to win one of these two races or I don't make the playoffs. I have to win one of these two races or I don't make the playoffs. That's the pressure going into Sonoma and Watkins Glen. He can go into Charlotte, he won't be in the chase, so he won't have any pressure. And
Exactly.
because it's a new road course, and he's already excelled at road course racing, he's going to have the upper hand already going in there. So AJ Allmendinger has zero stress, and he's great at road course racing. So we could see something out of the 47 out of nowhere.
The only thing is he doesn't need to make a mistake like he did in Sonoma.
I don't know how a veteran and a road ringer makes that kind of mistake, but it happens. I guess he accidentally downshifted.
Look at Ambrose back in 22. He shut the car off the
I-
safety when he didn't even need to.
I
Didn't get it fired back up. What happened? He ended up losing like 6 spots. Resulted in a Jimmy Johnson win. So,
that's Jimmy Johnson's only road course win to this day.
I'm
So
gonna bring something up about
yeah.
Charlotte.
Yeah.
I really think the people who's an advantage who does the Rolex 24 at Daytona. I
Definitely.
know it's a completely different track, completely different banking, but that's the only Roval that these Cup guys could actually technically run, and you could probably bring something.
And let's take a look at all the people who have driven at the Rolex 24. So we've had Nick Murray, we've had Larson, we've had Allmendinger, we've had Brendan Gaughan, we've had Austin
Jeff
Cindric.
Gordon, but he's retired.
I'm talking about now. Jimmy Johnson has.
Jimmy, yeah. 2004?
Somewhere around there. I believe that's it as far as I know. But now let's
I thought Brian Vickers did it one year.
let's make it a little bit more in depth. Prototypes and GT cars handle completely differently, but GT
Oh, yeah,
cars
they do.
are heavier and handle more like a stock car than a prototype. And out of those drivers, the only driver to drive a GT car at a Roval is AJ Allmendinger, the number 86 for
I
Michael
think-
Shank Racing.
I think you give the advantage to Allmendinger for this one. I really think he can win Charlotte. I agree with you. Guys. I just want to
So-
bring Daytona up to
Yeah.
sprint and it's just a backed up. But that's a completely different racetrack. But
I think a lot of it too comes down to just how they race the track, how the race goes.
Yeah.
exactly.
Because like they said when they were interviewing Kyle Busch after his practice session, what do you think about that straight right there, you know, where there's just the S's on the backstretch? You think you could go 2 right there? His words were, hell no, somebody's gonna end up getting wrecked.
And another thing,
Like that could ultimately dynamically alter the outcome of the chase.
let's also not forget AJ Allmendinger has also when it was just the oval in the playoffs, he's always run well at Charlotte, the oval in the playoffs. The fall race he always runs top 10. So a Roval is just added. So we might see something out of 47 we haven't seen in a while.
More track length.
Mhm.
Problems with these cars. If these cars are not hooked up for a place, I don't know. That's why we've seen testing there before the season even started. But it's gonna be different
So-
year and different time of year, and the track is gonna have different
So-
type of bite.
Not only
Because it's interesting is they're bringing the factor of rain tires.
Yeah.
I d-
Never seen a Charlotte fall race ever have rain delays.
I don't agree with the idea because
Or the
cars
banking, what
on
scares me.
it's banking. I know it's not that much banking, but these are very heavy cars. If you tap the throttle even a little bit, there's so much horsepower in those rear wheels and water on the racetrack. I don't like it, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, we
I'm
saw
gonna
it
bring
in
up
the All-Star
Watkins Glen a
race.
little
Granted,
bit.
those were on slicks, but we saw the chaos that can happen when you put rain plus a stock car at Charlotte.
Not to mention the scenario they're putting. This is going to be a cutoff race.
People are going to be extra aggressive.
You've got to go. This is your championship. This is your on the line.
Especially if you're right on the bubble.
Exactly.
Because
So-
it's the cutoff in the second round or
First round.
First round. So yeah, if you're in 15th or 16th going into that race and you got to gain, let's say, 15, 20 points, you got to go. You can't hold back.
No, and road coursing is a driver's track. I think this is a thing. Drivers gonna have more control than the cars with air or mechanical, but the car's gonna be affected through 1 and 2 in the high-speed section, but that's it.
Yeah, but I definitely agree. Road course racing comes down to not setup, but car control.
Yeah, pretty much.
So let's go ahead and the Cup Series won't be the only series running to Roval. We have the Xfinity Series. They will be running to Roval, but that's not what we're talking about right now. Let's go back to Darlington, backtrack a few weeks. We have Austin Cindric, lap 2 coming on to lap 3. Huge crash on the front stretch. What about Austin Cindric? I mean, that was...
Heartbreak.
Yeah, tough break.
If anybody saw his in-car after he crashed... He was livid.
I mean, I heard he was actually in tears in his interview.
I mean, he literally was pounding the wheel and he was having a tantrum. But you kind of feel for him because he's right on the bubble and he was running in the top 10 and he just wrecks. Lap 2.
He was having the race that he needed to help him get into the playoffs. That was a race he needed to do well in. He was doing well. And heartbreak.
It was in.
Can we really blame the 11 for it?
I didn't see it.
I did
so
not
I
see the
can't.
Yeah, I didn't see
Bye-bye.
it instantly either.
It didn't really, to be honest, look like it was intentional contact or anything like that. I think it's just this aero package is so twitchy. These cars are so unstable. You're just
Well, I mean, where was the contact? Was it coming out of 4?
was coming out of 4.
Was the 11 on the right rear? Square on the left rear? I mean,
It's neither here nor there. We can't really say.
I feel like the arrow is just too touchy with those cars. Like, you could literally probably barely touch that car, like we saw back in 2012, where you barely had to touch them and boom, gone.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And it's just unfortunate for Cindric. He really got a lot of potential, I think. He just hasn't had the able show.
Right now
Yeah, I mean,
he's
it's been tough break after tough break for the kid.
he and Chastain. Yeah, so him and Chastain, we'll get to Chastain in a little bit. They're both less than 1 race above the cutoff, so they're a little worried now. We
Yeah,
go
they have
on.
to be.
We go on to Ross Chastain, and we all know it was the highlight of the NASCAR side of motorsport side of the weekend. Ross Chastain dominated Darlington. I mean, he led 90 laps. He led 90 laps. He won both stages, and he went toe to toe.
I think he had the best car.
He went toe to toe with some of the best drivers. I mean, his opponent, Kevin Harvick, only led 18 laps compared to Ross Chastain's 90. So we talk about the incident. Ross Chastain, Kevin Harvick, they're battling for the lead. They come up on lap car. I believe the 40. It was Chad Fincham. No, it wasn't. It was Chad. It was Chad Fincham. My bad. So they lap Chad Fincham, and then Ross Chastain. He's on the high side of the groove, but he's trying to stay in the groove to where he doesn't lose control of his car. Kevin Harvick is shoving his car into the side of Ross Chastain, but he's also trying to stay on the groove. The groove at Darlington is very small, but they're already pretty much door to door. They just lapped the car, so there's no room on the outside. And if you go any higher, you pretty much lose control of your car, and you pretty much yield the lead. So it was from there. Harvick got a little loose on the inside of Chastain, and then put Chastain into the wall. Chastain regathered the car, and then made contact with Harvick that sent him spinning.
Unpopular opinion, that was all Kevin Harvick's fault.
I believe it was mostly. I'm not gonna say all. I believe it was mostly his fault.
I believe that Kevin Harvick overdrove the car going into 3 to make that move on Chastain, which led to him getting loose.
Well, definitely,
because
but
it looked to me like he went full send it mode.
I agree. He was on the aggressive, and I believe you should. I think you should race aggressive to an extent. I know he's a championship contender, but it's a race. You are gonna race aggressive. What I also put the blame on is the 40 car. It's not his fault, but just the 40 car beat.
Just caught him at a bad time.
Yeah, they caught him at a bad time. They were side by side, and then they're 3 wide at Darlington, so that's already
and it's
trouble.
not like the 42 and the 98 could just lay off and wait until the backstretch to pass them, because
they're racing each
the 42
other.
does that, the 98 clears him by the time they get to the backstretch.
And then the 22 is there also, so if he yields to the 98, the 22 goes right on by.
Right, there was nothing that the 42 could have done differently. He had to be aggressive to get by because he was fending off Kevin Harvick and Brad, I believe it was, in the 22.
Yes, he did win the race. But yeah, so Ross Chastain got into the wall, turned Kevin Harvick. Harvick went to the pit lane, sat in the pit box. I believe he flipped off the crew, and then went on.
I believe
basically
he should have been penalized for that.
I thought that's unsportsmanlike conduct since Kyle Busch did it to a NASCAR official.
It.
He flipped off a NASCAR.
They classified giving somebody the bird unsportsmanlike conduct.
That was 2 laps by NASCAR, but they didn't. I guess Harvick was already out. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that, but Harvick went on to bitch in his interview about Ross Chastain and how he was inexperienced. My personal opinion on that, calling him an inexperienced driver, I think is really funny that the inexperienced driver outdrove him all day, led 90 laps, beat him on several restarts, and won both stages over Kevin Harvick. So I think that really...
And Harvick does that, and he still can't win the race.
Yeah.
I also find it funny that just today he said he's no longer running in the Xfinity Series.
Oh,
yeah,
he did say that?
Here's another thing. He called the guy inexperienced, but he's racing in the Xfinity Series. That is where the inexperienced drivers are.
Exactly.
I want to give my 2 cents on this whole thing. Number 1, if I am not mistaken, this is Ross Chastain's first ever
in the
fully equipped race-winning car.
He's made 215 NASCAR starts
for, I think, 2 years now. Which JD Motorsports, they're not race-winning. They're not competitive, but they can make the playoffs on points. They're consistent. They're consistent enough to where they can gain points, but for Kevin Harvick to go out and say something like that to somebody who's literally just getting their big break, it's a little uncalled for, because this is coming from a guy who doesn't need to be in this series to begin with. He has no reason to be down there other than to just go and pull a Kyle Busch and curb stomp everybody. But I digress because I understand his frustrations. Harvick had a right to be upset. He didn't have a right to go and say the uncalled for things that he did say about Chastain. But he had a right to voice his displeasure because Chastain did just turn dead left and turn him.
I agree on that part. I agree. He should have been. He could have been mad, but it's also an Xfinity race, and it's not like he was losing anything.
Yeah, it is just an Xfinity race, and he's not in the championship. Chastain's just racing to prove himself to get a chance to
into the
be
playoffs.
In top equipment.
Yeah.
And he is in the playoffs, yes.
Also, I regret to say this to some extent, but wasn't Kevin Harvick's first NASCAR start in like kind of top tier equipment, and he was really inexperienced?
If you're talking about Atlanta, that was technically his third. I do not know about his first 2 because I was way too young back then.
I'm just talking about
yes,
when he took over
kind
the
of.
He made his debut at Cup debut of Brockenham, and then ran Vegas, and then at Atlanta the third race. In 2000, he was with RCR, and then before that, he was in truck.
The point is,
and subpar equipment.
the point is, he got the 29 car, which was basically the 3 car, and he was really inexperienced.
Yeah, he was already in race-winning equipment at the start of his career, so he really doesn't know what it's like to have to work your way up from subpar equipment, just barely being able to make the playoffs, compared to just being gifted top-notch equipment.
Honestly, and it's terrible circumstances how he got his ride, but he still was pretty much gifted the ride. I mean,
yeah, it's not the way that anybody wants to. Yeah, you don't want to get a ride that way.
He was going to be part-time in the 30 before the event at Daytona.
Oh yeah, definitely. But the point is, Harvick is out here. He pretty much started his Cup Series career in amazing equipment, and he did, like Larry said, he didn't have to work his way up. Chastain, this is his first time being in decent equipment. Obviously, if not the favorite, one of the race-winning contenders, and it's just blown away by one over-aggressive Cup guy with 45 laps to go. I feel like Kevin Harvick could have waited a couple laps so they got through some lap traffic and used maybe lap traffic as a pick instead of diving it in there while he's already trying to pass a lap car.
Absolutely. There's no reason why Kevin Harvick couldn't have waited until the backstretch or even turn 3 to make a move. He didn't have to make that move right then and there.
See, I feel like an experienced driver would have, realized the situation. There's still 45 laps to go. Let me chill out for a lap, maybe get him on the straightaway.
Yeah. That's literally all there was to that.
I've heard from other sides that Ross Chastain should have been smart enough to know, hey, he's back out, you have the car, chase him back down.
You see,
but at the same time, you've got to understand, this is Ross Chastain's big break.
Also,
He's just doing everything. All he can see is, I've got to hold on to it, otherwise I may not get this opportunity.
I would agree.
Exactly.
Not that easy, but got to deal with on the track.
See,
No,
I would
Chastain's already shown that he's not one that likes to be messed with.
see, I would agree with giving up the spot if Brad Keselowski wasn't right there behind. Yeah, because he would have lost the spot to Brad, and then he has 40 laps to try to get around to 22, which has already proved he's a fast car. So a fast car on a fast car is going to take at least 10 laps to get around, and then Harvick's going to probably have a big lead. So I understand Chastain not giving up, considering Brad was right there. Now, if Brad wasn't there and there was some space, yeah, give it up to him, get him back the next couple of laps. But there's cars right behind him. I don't agree with him giving up the spot in his first top-notch ride.
No, he should have been out there doing what he was doing, proving that he deserves another chance or even an opportunity at a full-blown... Yes, he went out there and he tried to prove that, which is rightfully so. That's what you do when you're you've been driving for underfunded cars for years.
With that, so Kevin Harvick says that's the reason, like, that incident is the reason why he won't get a chance to drive many more of these rides. Chip Ganassi went on Twitter and said that he will. Yeah, Chip Ganassi said, in fact, I don't think he hurt himself at all. If anything, he helped himself. Because
he proved he could run fast.
And he's saying that at Portland,
Yeah.
because he and Penske was at Portland, and he got the word of what.
Oh, that's right. Chip Ganassi was in Portland because Scott Dixon's in the championship hunt right now. We'll get to that in a couple more stories we got. After that incident, it was Harvick and Harvick and Chastain. They obviously fell out of contention for the win, and then Brad Keselowski pretty much it was his race to lose. Let the final 35-ish laps. He swept the weekend at Darlington. I don't know. What does it say about Brad? It's not that many times Brad sweeps a weekend. Consider there wasn't a truck race for him to sweep, but he did take both the Xfinity and Cup race. Yeah, that makes sense, but trucks don't race Richmond. Yeah, yes. Yeah. So,
No, you don't hear
Yeah.
Keselowski
so
sweeping that often. That's
you
why
c-
it's a little more shocking when it does happen.
yeah, and you're kind of happy. Like, yes, as a Cup guy winning Xfinity race, Cole Custer was second. That would have been cool to see. But he's also like, okay, he hasn't won an Xfinity race in a while, and he swept the weekend. That's pretty cool to hear.
Yeah.
So that was that. Let's we have Xfinity going to Indianapolis.
Oh no, there was something I wanted to touch on about Darlington Xfinity.
Oh yeah, what's up?
Landon Castle
Oh yeah,
finishes 14th at Darlington.
Indy L1 car.
Doesn't sound that impressive, but you take out all the Cup affiliations in Xfinity,
Which
your
is Brad
actual first
Keselowski,
place
Denny Hamlin.
Xfinity winner, or winner that would have been without Cup, was Landon Castle.
Cole Custer.
That shows that JD Motorsports improves, which shows that Chastain did deserve to move up.
Or you're talking about all
but
the
it's
Cup
also
teams.
not. Yes, without all the
Yes.
Cup teams in Xfinity, if that race was like Iowa, where there's no
No,
Cup teams and the finish was exactly how it was, JD Motorsports would have got their first win right then and there, and it would have been with Landon Castle.
So to his point, I know I'm stuttering a lot. Brad Keselowski won. They Cole Custer and SHR equipment. Tyler Reddick and Junior Motorsports, basically Hendrick equipment. Denny Hamlin, Elliott Sadler and Hendrick Motorsports equipment. Chase Elliott, Justin Allgaier, he's a past Cup driver and in Hendrick Motorsports equipment. Matt Tifft, RCR. Ty Dillon, RCR. Michael Annett, Hendrick. Daniel Hemmick, RCR. Brandon Jones, Joe Gibbs. Ryan Reed, Jack Roush, and then 14th is Landon Castle. In Johnny Davis. That's pretty cool.
I've preached for many years for somebody to give Castle another top-notch ride because it's been over 10 years since it happened.
No,
It's-
it's that Castle will probably roll off a shit ton of wins if he does.
I
What
just feel
wanna
like it's
see
starting to
next
get
year
late
is
to
him
Castle.
go back to JD full-time. Because JD was not that great when Castle was driving for them full-time. But if he went back now, he could probably make the playoffs on consistency.
Like Chastain.
Yeah. If Chastain can do it, Castle could do it.
And besides, let's not forget, if I recall, he led the championship points once upon a time ago.
Yes.
Alright, so...
Can I interject something here having to do with Xfinity?
Sure.
And this is totally getting in my mind. With Truex making the move to the right seat, do you think we'll see more appearances from him in the Xfinity?
No. No.
No, probably not.
No, not Truex.
No, I don't think Truex would.
Truex already...
What's the basis behind that? I mean,
He...
I think
we've seen Kinson, we've seen...
I think Truex is... it's gonna pay me... it's gonna pay me to say this. And I might even get some backlash for it. I don't see Truex's passion
I
in
don't
racing.
think Truex is one of those guys.
I don't think he's that
He
passionate
doesn't
to race
show
every
it that
week.
much. I do agree. He doesn't show his
He doesn't-
passion like... He shows that he can do it and he's good at it, but you don't see the heart and determination that you see from like Kyle Busch or William Byron, Jimmy Johnson, etc., etc.
Truex is a very stellar person.
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
he is.
Talk about a humble. He seems to be just very, not unappreciative is not the word I want to say, but very uncelebratory, I guess,
Uh,
at Homestead.
mhm.
And I think that's just his demeanor as a person.
Well, also,
I
let
think
me
he
tell
just
you why.
drives to be in a top-notch car because he has had one of the most roller coaster careers in NASCAR of recent years.
I also want to say why he won't make an Xfinity appearance is because his last one was the 2010 Ford 300. 2010 was his last Xfinity start.
And that was in the 8th?
I believe so. Alright, so we head to Indianapolis with the Xfinity Series. Ryan Reed is 70 points above the cutoff. Austin Cindric 60 and Ross Chastain's 54. I believe the Xfinity Series starts Ver playoffs the 2 weeks after Cup does. Let me double check that.
I think Xfinity runs for
Uh,
playoffs.
Xfinity starts their
I don't know.
playoffs. I guess. Oh wait, you're gonna make me go through all this. Sorry. Xfinity starts their playoffs at Richmond. Yes. So they have Indy and Las Vegas. They have 2 races left for the Xfinity Series, and we have Ryan Reed, Austin Cindric, Ross Chastain, and then outside the cutoff we have Michael Annett. Jeremy Clements is 118 behind. So pretty much only Michael Annett is the only threat from outside. I mean, because you can say Jeremy Clements mathematically has a chance to make it into the playoffs, but he has to
It's
win.
gotta be a win you're in.
He has to win or get 59 points both races. So, but Michael Annett is the only threat outside of the top 12. Do we see Michael Annett making the chase?
Yeah, I don't think he does. Granted, he does have one of the best equipped rides. I just don't think his talent matches the equipment.
I agree.
He won't make it. He barely got a top 10 at Bristol. He's NASCAR Xfinity Series equivalent of Sorokin.
Oh, I thought we were gonna go Stroll.
Oh man. Alright, so we're pretty much also saying Ryan Reed, Austin Cindric, Ross Chastain rounds out the playoff standings. Yeah, the Xfinity Series will also go to the Roval. That's going to be fun to see. We're going to pretty much go ahead and wrap up the NASCAR portion of our podcast because we're going to head to a portion. This portion is going to be mainly led by Luis. I'm still hosting it. But Luis had the lovely chance to spend his weekend in Portland, Oregon, where the Verizon IndyCar Series via Pro Mazda Road to Indy Lights Series, whatever the hell. I don't know. Luis, go ahead and let's talk about the weekend. And then we'll get to specifics for the rest of us. I have your pictures pulled up, so if you want to talk about the weekend. I have pictures from mainly the highlights from the IndyCar race, though. And I have your Indy Lights pictures.
Okay, let me see how it starts off. Okay, we got the photo. All right, it's practically the IndyCar drivers came to Portland to do Thursday testing, where we found out it was not going to be an easy road course for a lot of the drivers, even the experience. Let's go in the opening and the second session of testing, which I had the privilege to be there. Alfonso Solis and Graham Rahal had their personal problems at the track. They wrecked their cars, so their session was over. It showed some promising speed from like your heavy hitters, like your New Gardens, your Dixons, and the Will Powers of the world. So heading into Friday, it was much more so of the same, but you also have like the Ed Carpenter drivers of Spencer Pigot and Jordan King climbing up, having some short, strong, consistent runs, and Newgarden was one of the more consistent guys. Even Marco Andretti had some consistent lap times in practice. But the festival corners, which is turns 1 and 2, and turns 10 and 11, proved to be the most difficult among the IndyCar field. That's where you saw Will Power, Takuma Sato, Sebastian Bourdais, Alexander Rossi, Simon Pagenaud, and countless others have either hit the barrier, spun, or had problems before qualifying. Notably Bourdais, who had the fastest lap, and then the preceding lap, and the lap after he lost it in turn 11, hit the barriers, and they did absolutely everything to repair the car. And I might add, due to the fact that they have Santino Ferrucci, who wasn't that bad at all. Everybody say, oh, he's going to be the guy who's going to cause the big wreck in the turns 1 and 2 in the chicane. He actually held on his own for the most part, and because of having that third Dale Coyne entry, they were able to get the repairs done for Bourdais and on time. And that Frankenstein machine, as he called it in the press conference, he was able to get it up to the Fast 6, which, in that retrospect, the pole sitter was Will Power, who now has 54 poles, second all-time behind AJ Foyt. Power admits it's going to take a long time to get there. He may not even get to that point, but it was a pole for Will Power, who is among one of the championship contenders, along with Newgarden, Dixon, and Rossi. With the exception, the thing is, the Penske drivers that I mentioned were in the championship, they're more of a long shot, where everybody's talking about the battle between Dixon and Rossi, 26 points apart. So, with all of the incidents in mind, the big question will be, when will the first wreck happen? Oh, I forgot to even mention, Carlos Munoz show was okay in replacing Robert Wickens. It's a fortunate circumstance considering this is the first time he ever ran the Universal Aero Kit on the road course, because he's only run the Indianapolis 500 for Andretti, where he got 7th. And before we get to the races, let me get through Indy Lights, where it was pretty much an Andretti Autosport clinic between Colton Herta and championship leader Pato O'Ward. And all Patricio Ward, or known as Pato, has to do is to beat Herta in one of those races. And the main picture of that one that you see on the screen, I took that as just as he was making the pass, he was able to clear by Herta, and that pass was all it did. All he needed to win the Indy Lights Championship, which means he gets a guaranteed scholarship to run an IndyCar next season, including the Indianapolis 500. So there were 2 races in that one. He won the first one, but that was the one he clinched the championship. They got the sombrero and all of the celebratories. There were a lot of people from Mexico that were covering that weekend, mostly for Pato and Alfonso. But for him to win the championship, I was able to, and seeing the Indy Lights race, I was able to see just how fierce of a competitor he is. He just has that aggression and fiery passion that could be good for the future of IndyCar. Could be good for the drivers from Mexico, because the way it's looking like with Suarez out of a ride, more than likely, and Perez probably never gonna win a Formula 1 Grand Prix race. Maybe Pato could be the guy that Mexico could rely on being a force to be reckoned with. And if memory serves correctly, he and Colton Herta are subjected to be running the finale at Sonoma for Harding Racing with the George Steinbrenner package. Because there's been rumors surfacing around that Harding wants to expand, and this is probably the early sign. So I will get to see Patricio make his IndyCar debut. And oh, by the way, he swept the second race on the morning of the IndyCar race. He pretty much worked from the back of the field because he wrecked during race 2 qualifying, so he didn't get to run a pure left speed. And then an interesting incident happened at the start of the second Indy Light race, where Colton Herta, Ryan Norman, the pole sitter, which is another Andretti car who has the Journey Don't Stop Believin' sponsorship, got a little bit of a tangle, and then another Andretti car that my name is slipping through in my mind, ran over those IndyCar signs and the car lifted up quite a bit. So it pretty much came down to the 2 in red and white cars, notably Aaron Solis in the 9, and the one who does the spot that also I can't remember the top of my head because I don't have the entry list and all that. But once Patricio got by, it was pretty much ball game, and Pato O'Ward swept Portland. So it'd be interesting to see how his career unfolds, but it's a good time for positive news out of the Latin racing community for once. Now the IndyCar race itself. The lap 1 was not in the festival corners. It was in turn 3, where Zach Veach, James Hinchcliffe were battling side by side, where Veach didn't give the slightest room on Hinchcliffe, and it triggered a multi-car crash that collected Sebastian Bourdais, Ed Jones, Marco Andretti, Graham Rahal, and Scott Dixon, the championship leader. Andretti's car lifted, did a little couple bops, and then it tumbled upside down because as a result of one of those bops, Ed Jones's helmet got a little bit of a scrape when I was trying to get some force out of him, as you saw in the NBC telecast. So it got pretty hairy, and then once again, James Hinchcliffe with the helmet canister. I say this in NASCAR, the helmet canister. It's another scary moment.
Let's hold it right there. Let's get some opinions on this crash. lap 1, turn 3. Like he said, it was Hinchcliffe and Veach racing hard, and Hinchcliffe went around. Dust storm, no one could see. 98 went upside down. I don't know. But what about that?
Fucking game.
Oh no.
And anybody see the crash?
I didn't see the full thing. I saw pictures, but not really. I can't really say anything
Alright.
because
It was insane. I was
video.
just chilling, and then I'm like, oh, the IndyCar race is on. I turn it on, and literally I watch like live. They're going through turn 2. I'm like, oh, sweet, they just started, and then crash. I'm like, rip.
What was this? Almost the
I
third
mean,
week in a
I-
row we had to restart with a crash in the open lap?
No, that literally was their lap 1.
Yeah,
Yeah,
As soon as the green flag dropped.
but
that's what I meant.
what?
I know
What is
Pocono,
this?
they had one.
Is this the second or third week?
I think it's the second. I know Pocono was one. I think last race they had one.
Anyway,
That's 3 weeks in a row. I had not thought of that actually.
what was the third one?
I know one was Pocono.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that is 3 weeks in a row. Holy crap.
Which means Sonoma might be a shit show at the start. Who knows?
Oof.
Is Sonoma the next race?
Sonoma is the
Sonoma's in
next
2
and
weeks.
final race.
And Sonoma's
All
double
right, I
points.
got a
And
question
double
for
points.
Luis when we get to that point.
Yeah, well, we're gonna get there. Luis, go ahead and carry on after the lap 1 incident, or I guess the fallout from the lap
Well, no,
1
I can
incident.
ask it this episode, but I want to wait till he gets
Yeah.
towards the end before I ask it.
This particular wreck was the end of Marco Andretti's streak of most consecutive finishes among active drivers that are on the grid. His last DNF was at Phoenix 2017. So that's about 29 races that he's finished, whether people want to believe it or not. Now, that streak, the one who has the longest streak is Scott Dixon and Joseph Newgarden, which their last DNF was at Texas 2017. As everyone
Yeah,
remembers,
the
Texas
big
was
crash.
the 10 cars finish.
No, Scott Dixon was in a later crash. Newgarden was in an early crash with Ed Carpenter, right?
I believe so. But that was the last time both of those guys failed to finish.
That's interesting.
And keep that in mind as I go further with Dixon as far as the champion contendership goes, as far as him clinching. So yeah, Marco was out, Jones was out, Graham Rahal was out up until lap 71 when he decided to get the car back on and pass Marco and just solidify Marco Andretti's first last place finish since Barber at 2017.
Yeah, I see that. Graham Rahal finished 4 laps.
Yeah, and then with Ed Jones, that was his 4th DNF, which is the most among active drivers.
This season?
Proves that, yeah.
Oh.
Which proves that this is not what he needed, because it's pretty much all been but confirmed that Felix Rosenquist is going to probably take over his ride, and that leaves Jones without anything. And he had a solid weekend, so I mean, it was kind of like he's hungry, he's motivated, and that's the last thing he needed in that weekend.
So he has one last race to prove himself.
Yeah, and Hinchcliffe was able to continue, but he had further problems down the stretch. So that means Bourdais and Dixon were able to continue. For Bourdais, this is not the first time he's ever worked his way from the back to the front. He won at St. Petersburg that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Dixon, he got the penalty for going too fast after the pit road, and then that started his quest. But let me tell you something about Scott Dixon. It seems like no matter what happens to him, he finds ways to get out of the mess and turns nothing into something. He felt like his race could have been done from that wreck because he felt like something might have broke. He felt like the left rear suspension may have had some problems that made his car a little bit difficult to drive, he was able to work all the way back to a top 5 finish, gained 3 points over Alexander Rossi. And because of that, pretty much all but assures that Will Power and Joseph Newgarden are pretty much they're still in the hunt, but they're practically not. They don't have much of a shot because Scott Dixon has finished 24th or worse three
No.
times.
Actually, no. New Garden and Willpower are mathematically eliminated.
They have the double points.
Yes, but isn't max points 35? No, never mind. Max points is 50.
160.
I thought max points is 35. That's my bad. I don't know the IndyCar point system, I guess.
I can hardly pay attention to the total amount of points. I just look at the magic numbers and go from there. Okay.
No.
So Toronto and the Indianapolis 500 of 2005 and 2017 were the only instances where Dixon has finished 24th or worse. And there's the expectation that there could be at least, at the very most, 28 cars in the finale.
Ooh.
So it could happen, but the likelihood of Dixon losing the championship in that circumstance is very rare. I think they had it like at less than 2%. So it's practically Dixon and Rossi for the championship. Rossi, on the other hand, had a dominant race, and then it became a game of who had the better pit strategy and who was ahead at the right place at the right time.
Wasn't it with the caution with Ferducci, or was it Willpower's caution that threw off strategy?
It was a mixture of the cautions of Willpower, Zach Veach, and Santino, because that juggled all the running order where the early contenders were Rossi, Newgarden, and Jordan King. Then all of a sudden it became Takuma Sato, Max Chilton, Ryan Hunter-Ray, who I might add wasn't a two-stop strategy, and Spencer Pickett were all of a sudden right up there, and then Dixon and Bourdais came back into the mix. So in the closing laps on the final restart after Santino, who was actually having a great race, same with Pietro Fittipaldi, they were right up there in that top 10, so it shows you that it was going to be a compelling race of how in the world the heavy hitters are going to stop the guys that normally don't contend for wins very often, or let alone get a shot out of a podium. So, and then we're closing last, get the Gallagher machine, Max Chilton, the 59 had the pit, so it gave the lead to Takuma Sato. And then in the closing lap, Ryan Hunter-Ray was actually catching Sato, but not by much. And ultimately, he had to use all of his push to pass to do it and to find something to get by Sato, but that track is extremely difficult to pass. Very difficult.
He was also saving gas.
Yeah. No, now definitely, there's BP is there trying to write about what happened and all. A lot of stuff going on, so the details may not be all the way through, but in the end, Indianapolis 500 a year ago, and the third time of his career, Takuma Sato went all the way from 20th to first to win at Portland in their IndyCar's return since 2007. So it's a huge win for Sato, huge win for Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan. And then Hunter-Ray was that close of getting another win. And then third was Sebastian Bourdais. So that's 5 podiums and 6 starts at Portland, with his worst being from, I believe, 2005, when he finished outside the top 10. And before Sato's win, the only driver to have won at Portland outside of the top 10 was Mark Blundell in 1997 at 11. The qualifying was key, but because of that first caution, essentially, track position isn't necessarily key as long as you have the smartest strategy, which that's what it all came down. And some people believe it's one of the fondest races IndyCar has had. And pretty much my closing thought is this is a win for Sato, Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan, excuse me, and also a win for the Pacific Northwest in general, because the people responded and they showed up. There was a lot of people for that part of the race. And if that's a good indicator that there are fans of the Pacific Northwest, I think it can only go up from there. And if the rumors come into fruition that NASCAR are interested at either Portland or Evergreen, that's going to be even better.
That's really nice analysis, Luis. Well, Yeah, we have Takuma Sato with his third Grand Prix victory, or third win in IndyCar of his career over 9 seasons. You feel it's a feel-good story for Takuma Sato. And again, Ryan Hunter-Reay was closing it so much there at the end, but he had to save gas, and then he had so much more push to pass over Sato, but he couldn't use it because he had to save gas. So it was just a really tight situation for both of them.
And the thing of it is, when I was there were a lot of several Sato fans, and even the photographers that cover the auto racing, they love Sato. Some of those IndyCar photographers that are from the Japanese area have been covering IndyCar all the way back to the Hiro Matsushita days of the early 90s. So this is a huge win for them. And when I spoke to my editor, she was telling me about this, that I even said it. I even thought to myself, he's actually even bigger than Okada when it comes to Japanese athletes. Of course, in Japan, it's wrestling and baseball, and then if somebody's successful from the auto racing world, of course they're going to be right up there.
Yeah, let's talk about basically solidifying his championship. As Louis said, like less than 2% is the chances of Scott Dixon losing the championship. Scott Dixon, I don't know how much luckier can get. Lap 1, he got right into the middle of that incident and got very little damage. Somehow was able to get little damage, kept going. Then he had a pit road penalty, I believe, for speeding later, and then he went to the back of the field twice and had to make his way back up to the front and ended up finishing 5th. Really good points today, especially with him outdoing Rossi. That now moves him up to 29 points entering Sonoma. I don't know, so what are y'all's thoughts on Scott Dixon and his very, very lucky run?
It was just a lucky run. You get those days in racing. Nothing how long he's been doing it.
Alright, so I guess that's what we got for IndyCar at Portland. It was an amazing race. I really enjoyed it. We move on. One race left in the season. The IndyCar, the GoPro Grand Prix at Sonoma. Scott Dixon enters with a 29-point lead. A double points race. What are we looking at for Sonoma race? What are our predictions?
I personally believe Rossi can have a shot. Like, it's just Dixon needs to be outside of the top 5, and Rossi's got to win out. But this track has been mostly in favor of Dixon. I think Rock may not be necessarily going to take Rossi to win the championship, but if he were able to pull it off. And here's the thing about Rossi's season. Had it not been for that debacle of Joe Alliance, it would have been much closer in this championship than it already is. It would have been a different story. But for Dixon, it's just like any other race. And people say this has been notoriously not been the most exciting race of the year, probably the least exciting race of the year being the finale. I'm thinking I could see a good surprise coming out of it. It's also the last race under the Verizon banner, the last time they'll run at Sonoma before they go to Laguna. So maybe, we'll have a bit of a better crowd, which are going to be competing against the San Francisco 49ers and the NFL. And within that vicinity, so we'll see how many people will show up. But I think this championship could have a good ending. But I still see Dixon pulling it off.
Yeah, Sonoma really is in favor of Scott Dixon. You saw his most recent championship battle with Juan Pablo Montoya, I believe, in 2015. And it was really close entering, and he just destroyed Montoya.
Yeah, that's what happens when teammates collide. That a championship lead that you literally held every single round, and you lose it in the championship race.
So yeah, Scott Dixon with the experience, but Rossi with his almost natural knack for road courses. You see, his first time at road courses, he is exceptionally well. Watkins Glen last year, Portland, and it's his first time at the road course. He at most road courses, he will excel when it needs to be. But is it too late? 29 points again, like you said, he has to win, and Dixon has to finish outside the top 5. Very possible, but Sonoma is one of Dixon's better tracks. Any other predictions for Sonoma and championship-wise?
Ideally, it would have to be outside the top. I would think even if it's out of, and mostly I think out of the podium, then and Rossi wins that, I will do the trick. But 20, I think it's 180 between first and second, so that's 20 points.
Yeah. Oh yeah, so it is. Yeah, you have to finish third or worse. Scott Dix has to finish third or worse, and Rossi has to win. That is very possible.
But that's all it would take.
Only a walk-off for Dixon. There's still a shot that Rossi could theoretically come away with the championship at the end of the day.
But Rossi needs to have a near perfect day.
So, let's just say that Rossi has a bad day and Dixon has an absolutely abysmal day. Who wins the championship
Ooh.
under that circumstance?
Dixon has the point lead going in, but Newgarden and
I mean,
Will
let's say
Power
he finishes
87
dead
points.
last. Like, he pulls a Weldon and flips before the start-finish. Or even the start of the race. Like, he don't even get to start the race.
Well, Marco needs to give that flip horseshoe to Dixon for that to happen.
So let's say Scott Dix. What are we looking at entry list wise for Sonoma, Luis?
I've heard as many as 28, and Harding could see more than one entry. I mentioned Pato Award and Colton Hurt are slated to make their
Alright.
debut with. If I can remember, I think it's either today or Thursday that. I think Thursday's when Pato
Alright.
has his Sonoma
So-
Harding in the.
Let's
So don't expect Gabi Chavez to be in the 88.
let's say 28 drivers make the race. Scott Dixon finishes 28th. 2 points to Scott Dixon's total, which takes him to actually an even 600. Let's say Alexander Rossi finishes 27th. That's 3 points to his total, puts him at 572. Joseph Newgarden, if he wins, he goes from 511 to 611, and he would win the title by 11 points. Or Will Power. But they would have to win, and Dixon and Rossi would have to finish 28th and 27th.
Yeah, and I think that hurt in Will Power was more or less DNFs. Newgarden has not had a DNF, so it's mostly results that he didn't necessarily have strong results. Whereas Will Power, you can look back as surely it's going to be those 3 retirements like he had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Newgarden, there's really little to no, there's no excuses or what ifs. It's just that, yeah, he finished every race, but he's just not up there with the Rossis and Dixons this season.
All right, so ultimate prediction: who wins Sonoma? Who wins the championship?
Dixon wins Sonoma and ultimately wins the championship.
I'm gonna go with the unpopular here and say that Rossi has a great day and somehow is able to pull off the championship.
I agree with that.
I said Dixon wins the championship, and I'm gonna probably say, wrap it out of my head, wrap it out of the rear end. I'm gonna go. I think Pagano will finally end a frustrating, disappointing season. Albeit he's in the top 10 with a win.
I say Rossi wins the race, but Dixon finishes second.
I have a quick question. Does IndyCar still have good points for qualifying? For pole winners?
They do give up for pole sitters.
1 point,
And it's double points, so it's 2 points.
which yes, but a win in second place, that's 22 points, provided Rossi gets the pole, and the gap is 29 points.
Yeah. Still, 2 points.
Yeah. All right, so that's it for IndyCar. We now head to the final section of the podcast, Formula One. The weekend started off with Marcus Ericsson having a wild ride, a DRS failure, entering turn 1 at Monza, and Ericsson goes for a wild ride. What are our thoughts on that?
Definitely great to see the safety innovations coming to these cars.
I think we can finally put the.
Leclerc.
I think with this accident we can put the rest. The Halo did its job and is actually a good innovation by the FIA this year.
2 weeks in a row, we see the Halo make its stand its ground in to the unpopular opinion of the Formula One fans.
Oh wait, that's the odd though. That's not to enhance towards Formula One, it's towards IndyCar, excuse me. That's a different animal, but thank God it's not Leclerc. I was gonna say if that would have been Leclerc, it's like, geez, what kind of ride? This has been his the second, third of the season, just bad. Whereas Raikkonen has been the epitome of the second, third, being probably the best driver as far as consistency wise.
All right, so we head into the Grand Prix as he started talking about Raikkonen. Heading into the Grand Prix, Raikkonen qualified on pole, already huge. Out-qualified Sebastian Vettel, fastest lap in Formula One history. And you want to say probably a huge thanks to Sebastian Vettel, giving him a little bit of slipstream there on the front and the straightaway leading up to Ascari. With Vettel's slipstream to Raikkonen, Raikkonen was able to almost clear the fastest lap in Formula One history big time. So a new record set by Kimi Räikkönen this past weekend, and you would definitely say thanks to the Sebastian Vettel for that. So Räikkönen on pole, Vettel second, Hamilton third, and that's how they started. You saw as they went into turn 1, Brendan Hartley had a collision with, I can't remember off the top of my head, and was out of the race already, and that resulted in a safety car. But before the safety car came out, entering turn 2, Vettel and Hamilton were side by side, and Vettel had a very shallow exit because Vettel had a shallow exit because Hamilton couldn't go much further, or he would hit the curb entering the second part of the chicane. So Vettel hit the left side of Hamilton's car, went around, and ultimately sent Vettel to the 18th-ish position. What are our thoughts on that incident? Whose fault was it? Or just hard racing?
I think it just comes down to a matter of hard racing.
I agree.
As a Ferrari guy, I was extremely disappointed.
Same.
Nothing to Vettel's championship hope.
No, if anything, that hurts it.
No, it's tough, man. I don't even know what to say anymore
This
about.
could be a harder season to come back from than.
Hamilton has to start having some DNFs or something.
Yeah, he's gonna have some bad luck. Like, he might even have to be having the luck that the Ferraris had at Singapore last year for him to even lose the championship lead, because now it's close to over a race now, isn't
It's 30 points.
Okay, so it's actually over a race now.
Mm-hmm. Which very well will change if Hamilton wasn't classified for one race and Vettel won.
Right.
Then it's a 5-point championship battle. It's very possible. I mean, we see wasn't it Raikkonen had the smallest issue at Spa with the DRS, and actually this is 2 weeks in a row now. DRS has been an issue. Well, Raikkonen, you could say, was had damage from a crash, but Ericsson had damage in practice, or not damage, had a DRS issue in practice. So 2 weeks in a row, DRS has been an issue. I didn't even think about that, but what are our thoughts on that?
I wanted to say after the Raikkonen thing that it was just a freak accident, but after the Ericsson issue, or actually I don't even want to call it an issue, I want to call it a a
Massive part
catastrophic,
failure.
yeah, a massive DRS failure that they might want to look into what's causing it, because the last thing that the FIA needs is another injury or worse. Just
Yeah.
4 years after Jules
Yeah.
Bianchi's unfortunate incident.
Yeah, DRS now 2 weeks in a row causing issues for drivers. I would assume the FIA starts to look into that heading into Singapore. Singapore is in 9 days, by the
I
way.
would suggest that they do.
Or is it 9 days? I don't know what I'm saying.
I think it's in...
It's in 2 weeks or something like that.
Yes.
And then we have Kimi
But,
Räikkönen from the pole. He dominated most of the race. Led through to his first pit stop. But Hamilton was not far behind. He kept it within 1 second for most of the first stint. Räikkönen pitted several laps before Hamilton. I believe it was closer to 8 laps. And Bottas stayed out even longer. So when Bottas stayed out, Räikkönen cycled out behind Bottas. Bottas had yet to pit. Hamilton pitted 8 laps later. So Hamilton was on fresher tires, and he had his teammate in front of Räikkönen to hold him up. So what are our thoughts on the Mercedes mind games that happened, where Bottas really backed Räikkönen up into Hamilton with Hamilton's fresher tires?
I think Bottas really needs to stop doing all these orders for Mercedes and race for himself.
Oof.
Because with him doing all of this, it's actually hurting him, in my opinion, more than it's helping him. Because what he's basically doing is he's being Lewis Hamilton's lapdog. He's just doing whatever they want him to do to benefit
Did you see
Hamilton,
that one
and
picture?
it's screwing him. Yes, I did actually see that one picture, which is actually what kind of got me onto that topic. Or that opinion. But, I mean, it's true because we already know that Bottas can win races with Mercedes. He proved it already. Proved it
Dominated Russia last season.
Yeah, absolutely. Which, if he started doing that now, I mean, we could probably see another Rosberg-Hamilton style battle for the championship.
And that would be fun.
Or better yet, instead of it being just Hamilton, Vettel, Hamilton, Bottas, Vettel.
Put Räikkönen up there, we have a deal, man.
Exactly.
Man, how
Have
cool would it be for
the
4
championship that
cars
could
to battle
go
for the
all the way
championship?
to Abu Dhabi.
Oh yeah. And we
I mean, that'd be
fought
the best battle that we've had in recent years.
we fought with Vettel's win in Spa, and let's say have each driver win at their respective track. We expected Vettel to win Monza. Obviously that did not happen, and Hamilton won, which is worst case scenario in terms of championship standings, with Vettel finishing 4th. We predicted a 4-point gap for Vettel entering Abu Dhabi, so now we would have to readjust our predictions. We can get to that in a second. But, yeah, so the Mercedes mind games with Bottas really being the Mercedes bitch dog, backing Räikkönen into Hamilton. Räikkönen still didn't back down. He took a good 10, 12 laps before ultimately Hamilton just finally got a good overtaking attempt and passed him in turn 1. And then Hamilton set sail because he had 8-lap fresher tires.
I think it's heartbreaking for Räikkönen because if my memory serves me right, which it might not because it's proved me wrong before, but Räikkönen hasn't won a race since Australia in
2013. It was a 108 Grand Prix winless streak, and he would be if he won Monza, he would be the first driver ever to suffer a 100 race winless streak and break it.
Which
Anyone was so disappointed. Just like last week, I wanted Ocon to get a podium.
I don't know, Luis, what were your thoughts on the Mercedes?
Started on my news of the thought of Force India next year, because I haven't even talked about that.
What were your thoughts on the Mercedes mind games, Luis?
I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I knew it was coming when I was half awake, half asleep, because because it was a stressful Saturday that ended on a mega positive note actually. But when I overheard Crosby saying that about Raikkonen and Bottas, I just knew it's like, yep, watch Hamilton get by Raikkonen. And yeah, lo and behold, it did happen. It was like, jeez.
Very well, Raikkonen had a amazing chance to hold off Hamilton, provided Bottas had pitted and minded his own business.
To be honest with you, I don't think there should just be team owners anyway. I would start making rules against it.
Yeah, I don't understand the team orders. We see
It's one
Team orders to me is part of what's actually ruining F1
It
in
is.
today's world.
It is. You have a guy in the championship. I would rather have two guys, my two cars racing. For example, if I own a team, I would rather have my two cars battling out for the win instead of someone else. And my guy holding someone back so he can win. It's gonna be shared treatment, but it doesn't work like that in F1 world, apparently. Just doesn't.
And it is unfortunate, but
I just
I
want
mean, how
to,
are you gonna...
before we go, I just want to say that the safety car was a result of Stoffel Van Dorn, Brendan Hartley, and Marcus Ericsson getting together on the front stretch. Anyway, carry on.
I actually didn't see that part of the GP.
It was the first lap.
However,
Yeah.
if there's any positive out of this whole Grand Prix, it has to be at the expense of someone, but Mr. Sorokin finally got a point.
That is true.
Reynolds takes the Renault for calling out Haas, which sucks for Grosjean. But it's just funny and finally and embarrassing that Sorokin finally got a point by attacking.
Yeah, that is so true. I forgot that was news also. The Haas of Roman Grosjean was disqualified.
Was
with
it
the
for something with the floor?
It was the floor, and the Renault pointed it out in Parc Ferme. Snitch.
I mean,
because they're competing with Haas for best of the rest this season.
Yes.
which some people at Renault
But-
actually have gone and stated that they have actually beaten Haas as best of the rest at this point in the season, which I do not agree with.
But it was the 14th of 21 Grand Prix, or 20 Grand Prix, sorry, and Sergei Sorokin.
21 is right.
Oh, my bad. All right. Oh, that's right, France. And Sergei Sorokin is now the last driver to get points. Everybody has gotten points this season. 14 races in.
Yeah, it wasn't like, I believe Grosjean got it in his 8th, and then everybody else had it like at least after Baku.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if Grosjean actually got points in the early, like a Melbourne or a Bahrain. It would be as embarrassing for Sorokin to finally score a point in the 14th round.
I just want to also say laps led this season. Sebastian Vettel's led 341. Lewis Hamilton's led 251. Raikkonen's led 44. Bottas has led 64. Verstappen 54 and Ricciardo 90. Nobody else has led a lap this season in F1.
Yeah, and the big three, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, only went in triple digits. And the constructors, Renault had like 86 something points.
Yeah, I mean they're the only ones in triple digits driver points as well. All 6 of those drivers are triple digit driver points.
Yeah, it shows you, that's the mind-boggling thing looking at the points table, because I just look at the championship, don't think much about it, but then when I look at it in greater detail, jeez, it doesn't surprise me, but look how competitive those guys are. They're at a different zip code, whereas Renault are pretty much taking the spot of best of the rest. Haas are trying to do everything to be the best of the rest, and Force India has just been as hot of a mess than Laurel Van Ness.
All right, so
I'll get to Force India in a minute.
well, we before we get to Force India, we do have we have let's go to Singapore real quick. We'll come back. Well, let's predict some outcomes of Singapore. What are we looking at in terms? Singapore is the lengthiest, the slowest circuit. No, the second slowest circuit on the Formula One schedule. 23 corners. What teams does Singapore on the schedule benefit, and then who ultimately wins Singapore?
I think Singapore actually
Goes to
could
Hamilton,
benefit.
in my opinion.
Yeah, it goes to Hamilton, unless we get an extreme circumstance like we had last year with Vettel, where it's a chaotic start and they go 3 wide and the accident happens. But
I don't want to think about that.
Verstappen.
No, I'll say this. I'll give you my answer after the first corner because I was an idiot for playing that Singapore crash on New Year when the countdown to 10 began at New Year's Day.
What?
Like, do you remember the memes last year? Like it said at 11:59:47.
Oh,
At
yeah.
the moment it strikes midnight, the crash happens, or whatever the setting is of the meme.
Yeah.
That was kind of sad why people actually doing that. Just to remind myself that last year what might have been.
All right. So Wes, we're pretty much predicting Singapore goes to Hamilton. Where does Vettel end up finishing?
second.
Which ultimately gives Hamilton another 7 points. It's 37 points of a lead Hamilton has over Vettel heading into what's the next race? Russia. So we're predicting 37 points Hamilton has over Vettel heading into Russia. Provided Hamilton wins, Vettel finishes second. Alright, so yeah, let's get to wrapping up a little bit of silly season here. Before we get to Force India, it was rumored heavily that Ferrari is thinking, or it's most of Ferrari agrees that Raikkonen should stay, but I believe it's the team principal who disagrees with that. And it was told that Raikkonen was told over a phone call that he would not be with Ferrari next season. It's a rumor. I am not sure. The rumor is he won't be with Ferrari next season, and then he wins the pole, which was really tough. That, you know, I believe Ferrari was trying to announce that at Monza, but with him winning the pole and then dominating, that would not go well. And then he was pretty much fighting for himself out there because the team was barely going to help him. They were in an awkward position. The rumor is he was in an awkward position and he was fighting for himself with very little team help. What are your thoughts on that rumor?
I want to say that as far as them wanting to say that Raikkonen is out of Ferrari in Monza alone is a very, very bad idea.
I don't know, why would they be thinking that Monza at their backyard?
Right, this is, I mean, they're talking about their home track and they're going to announce that one of their drivers is out, like,
This would all be for Leclerc
well.
to go to
Well,
Ferrari.
actually, I heard another rumor that Leclerc was going to Haas.
Well, that's what I heard too, and I thought Leclerc was signed. He hadn't signed yet, but it was rumor he was going to Haas, and everybody at Ferrari, besides I believe the team principal, agrees with that. That Raikkonen stays another couple seasons, get Leclerc more experience before he gets to the big ride. But the other rumor is the team principal doesn't agree with that, and he's a huge Leclerc fan and wants Leclerc in the Ferrari next season.
Ultimately, it does gonna end with Leclerc going to Ferrari, but I would
It's a
much
matter of
rather see
when.
them give him a couple years in Haas and get used to a better ride than the Sauber. Not that the Sauber is as bad as it was in the recent past. It's a much better car now. It's a much more well-developed car, but it's still not on the terms of being able to compete with best of the rest.
I'm fine with either one, honestly.
Yeah, as long as he gets a better ride.
The Ferrari, then I wouldn't have a problem with it.
All right.
No, I
so
wouldn't either.
what's your silly season update on Force India?
As unfortunate as it is, I don't see Ocon re-signing, which he's already talked with Vettel and pretty much has confirmed that he is out next season at Force India. He does not have a ride as of now. Perez was actually on the short list for McLaren before Stoffel Van Dorn left, and they decided to get Lando Norris to replace him.
And Norris has been
So-
making huge moves in Formula 2. Been really fun to
Yes,
watch him.
And he is a very talented driver, to say the least. Very potential filling driver, I should say. But as it is right now, obviously Stroll to Force India, or whatever it's going to be next year, because they also have confirmed that it's not going to be named Force India next year, is a given because his dad bought the team, he owns it. But his teammate, I would probably go and say that they could get Sorokin from Williams. They could get somebody from GP2. They could even bring the test driver up. I have not actually made any guesses as to who the new driver will be. But I do not think that Perez stays. Despite...
Which is absolutely freaking suck in my opinion. As I've already mentioned when I talked about Pato Award, it's a good sign. This is why, because it looks because with Suarez, Perez is probably in borderline in danger of being outrigged, despite everything he did to keep this team afloat to go into Spa. It looks like none of it's gonna matter. It's just gonna be Williams with a much better equipment.
Yeah, which is sad considering everything that...
George Russell, the Mercedes test driver, if they're willing to bring him to go down there, which probably, I'll say, okay. But either way, Perez is, I hate to say, he's not going to win. It's pretty much, the ship has sailed on that one.
Yeah, it's... The way I see it, if it is going to be a former F1 driver, in a perfect world, I would love to see Pascal Wehrlein get another chance. But
Yes, that's perfect world.
I don't think that's going to be the case either, because I don't see Force India being competitive next year. I don't see them being able to beat Renault or Haas for best of the rest. Mainly because I don't think they're going to have the backing that they had with Force India. Because Stroll's not
Stroll's not going to perform.
popular driver with the F1 community as a whole. Plus, I think he's kind of came off to everybody that's involved with F1 that he's a bit silly when it comes to being behind the wheel.
Oh, no doubt. So I wanted to backtrack. That was going to be our final topic, but I wanted to mention this earlier, and it completely went to the back of my mind. I did not write this down, but I thought about it. So let's go ahead. 12 hours ago, or I think it was actually yesterday. I forget if it was today or yesterday. But the 2019 IndyCar schedule was released. It was today. All right. And so some notable changes. We already knew Sonoma was backing out of their deal. Let's just kind of go ahead in the schedule. In March we have St. Petersburg and Circuit of the Americas. That is interesting.
That is huge.
Formula One's now at COTA, IndyCar's at COTA, and NASCAR. The rumor is NASCAR is pushing to go to COTA. COTA is
Speaking of COTA,
getting a lot of
there's
popularity.
actually a thing with COTA and NASCAR right now.
Yes.
The owner of Texas Motor Speedway
Eddie
is
Gossage
having
is
a
not-
hissy fit
Yeah, exactly.
with the
He doesn't wanna
execs
lose
at
one of
F1
his-
because COTA in 2019 is going to be competing with Texas Motor Speedway.
In the date, yes, that is right. Formula One
Yes.
is going to be the Formula One date in 2019 is the first weekend of November, and the Texas Chase race is the first weekend of November. That's Austin and Fort Worth. Austin and Fort Worth are about 2.5 hours away from each other.
Whereas the IndyCar race at COTA just replaces the date of Phoenix, which
Yeah.
replaces with the Cup race at Martinsville, so it's nothing.
Yeah. IndyCar doesn't really clash.
Only
In-
time when they do when the truck
IndyCar might.
The IRL and NASCAR work together with the trucks
Yeah.
instead of having the IndyCar in town. And it drew a lot of people when trucks and IndyCar had those conventions.
The only weekend now I can think of is Texas. I don't know any other weekend that truck and IndyCar are at the same track other than Texas.
Because they really don't do it anymore because I think it's mostly a Brian France thing that they don't do it except for Texas. And of course, they did it in Vegas. Well, they once did it in Vegas, and you know how that ended up, which I'll end it from there.
But yeah, so in March we have St. Petersburg and Circuit of the Americas. April we have Barber and Long Beach. We expected Barber and Long Beach to be back on the schedule along with St. Petersburg. May, it's just the same month of May. It will always be the Indy Road Course in the first half and the Indy 500, the 103rd running of the Indy 500, May 26th. Of 2019. June is a jam-packed month. We have the Streets of Detroit races 1 and 2 June 1st and 2nd. Texas Motor Speedway June 8th, and June 23rd is Road America. I like June. I like June. July we have Toronto, July 14th, July 20th Iowa, and July 28th Mid Ohio. August we have Pocono, August 18th, and August 24th is Gateway, and instead of Sonoma to ending out, it's still a West Coast swing here at the end. In September, it's Portland and Laguna Seca, September 1st and September 22nd to end the season. Louis, since that ending kind of affects you, the West Coast swing, what are your thoughts? And what about Laguna Seca? Are you up for going to Laguna Seca?
It honestly does not affect. It falls to the same weekend as this year at Portland. I think the ideal goal is probably we'll go to Long Beach. That's my ideal thing. And then Portland, of course. As far as Laguna is concerned, it'll be an interesting one to see. But as far as me going to Portland compared to Sonoma, that is unlike. We'll see how it goes within the year's course from now, because they're trying to figure out a way for it to be more feasible. But no, this retract the feasible part and the more stuff. But IndyCar being pushed, the finale being a week further, I don't think it will hurt per se. So it'll be interesting, but that just gives a long weekend and personal. And honestly, if you doubt race week off, then the finale is more. I think it's more reasonable that way than a race, then two weeks off, then back to the finale. I don't know why.
I don't know. I think it works well. It builds more hype if it's a close championship. If it's a blowout and then nobody's gonna watch the last race of the season. So any other thoughts on the IndyCar schedule for 2019?
I'm hoping one day they go to Michigan.
Ooh.
I don't know with the All Club. After that one, they may never go back to the 2-mile oval, heavy 2-mile oval.
Well, Fontana was mostly because they want the finale, not so much of a safety issue.
Sure.
Alright, so other news to wrap up the weekend. If I'm not mistaken, I think Ken Schrader won the Southern Illinois 100. I need to double check that.
Yeah, he beat Tony
That was the ARCA race.
The ARCA was Logan Seavey.
Oh, Logan Seavey. Okay, yeah, Logan Seavey, Will Kimmel, Riley Hurst, your top 3. And what did Ken Schrader win?
Was it a dirt race?
Support race before the
Okay.
minutes at DeCoy.
I'm like, what in the world did Ken Schrader win then?
I'm not sure. I haven't really checked. I know it's Schrader beat Tony Stewart in something at DeCoy, not ARCA, but the.
Yeah.
Must have been
I saw it on
Support
Twitter.
cars or something.
Natalie Decker continues to disappoint, finishing 12th at the coin.
You're still better than Danica Patrick.
That's a tough one. The only thing she has over Danica right now is not wrecking cars.
Okay, I have a quick question. Do y'all know what have you all seen or heard anything from Michael South at all lately?
Who?
After he won Daytona, he's disappeared.
Oh.
Yeah, I haven't seen or heard anything about him since.
But
Because I have the Daytona diecast of the Sinclair cars, like the Sinclair pulled out or something. I don't know.
alright, so that's
Unless they just found more investment on Tony Breininger.
as far as I know, VAT heading into this weekend. Friday, September 7th, Friday night is the ARCA 200 at Lucas Oil Raceway. That I don't believe is televised. That's disappointing again.
Probably Map TV.
I don't have that.
I'm gonna say this hashtag bring back the Kroger 200.
Yes. Saturday is the Xfinity Series race at Richmond, the Lilly Diabetes 250. Wait,
That's a pillow race.
it's a pill race. Wait, why does it say Richmond? It's supposed to be Indy, I'm pretty sure, huh?
Yeah, I still believe in Richmond should be race 26, but hey, you gotta get people somehow in Indianapolis.
I don't know. It says Xfinity's going to Richmond. I know that is wrong for sure. But the Lilly Diabetes 250 at Indy. This Sunday we have the Monterey Grand Prix for the Continental Tire, the WeatherTech Sports Car Series Championship at Laguna Seca. We have the Big Machine Brickyard 400, Sunday, September 9th at 2 p.m. The next F1 race is Singapore, Sunday, September 16th. And the next IndyCar race, the final IndyCar race, the Grand Prix of Sonoma, also Sunday, September 16th. I guess that's all we have. Any final thoughts on this racing weekend heading into the next one?
Those darn lap cars, it's just life. They complain, and they just move on. As far as Ross Chastain, I hope this is the beginning of something greater. Sure, he may be an asset behind the wheel, suspending, but hey, he's proven that if you get the opportunity and deliver, results will come.
All right. Well, I guess without any further ado, we have we're gonna end it here. So I'm Emerson Arnott. I'm here for Luis Torres, Larry Arsenault. We had Kyle Petrie. We had Raptor. We had Craig Patterson. From all of us, have a good night. We'll see y'all next week.